Face. Yes.
No, I haven't been talking to Adam or Rogue Mistress. I was actually just watching a zombie movie a little earlier.
Which movie?
Hence, the discussions about cannibalism.
Yeah.
Well, only the best zombie movie, actually.
That really, really narrows it down.
Yeah.
Which would be Train to Busan.
That is a very good
that is a really good movie.
Right? So, it is probably my favorite zombie movie, and it is one of the best. It's come up because you actually cared about the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Only kind of. The protagonist was really, really awful. I did like the father-to-be in that was a very interesting character. Because it was one of those films that's about the humans being the greatest danger to one another. Like, once they figure out what's going on with the infection or whatever that's spreading amongst them.
I mean, it's kind of like the situation we have at hand, right? We are our worst enemies in space right now.
Yeah, and this is, and look, part of this is a little troubling because we are in contact with Conduit,
mm-hmm.
And yet our interactions with the other Chariot ships aren't necessarily showing a unified or even a unified in purpose whole.
Yeah. I'm not sure if there's anything that can be done about that. I mean, I feel...
There isn't, but it's still troubling.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the best we could do is just try to explain to Conduit, in this case, to... that is the human psyche, and that, there will never be sort of this, cohesive, same thought, we hardly agree with anything, ever, so...
Sure.
I don't think that's the case.
See, look at that. Yep. But we'll see what Conduit's people think with...
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, once she returns, what her creators might be saying so far. I mean, she's had a bit of information at this point.
Well, the other question...
There hasn't been any more rumors spreading about our interactions now that I guess it's known that several other chariots have interacted with...
I'm not sure.
Conduit.
Perhaps, but...
I have not heard anything.
Yeah.
I do like your idea, though, Fatima. This was the Conduit giving herself a name.
Oh, you read my message. Yeah, I wasn't sure quite how to get it to Conduit, considering she doesn't really have sort of a signed correspondence box, so...
True, but it's with the daily packets that go out, so...
Yeah, I was going on an assumption. I have no idea if she would have even read it.
I have a question about dinosaurs.
I'm sorry?
I have a question about dinosaurs.
Oh, of course. Good evening, Conduit.
Good evening. Is it evening for you? Is it evening here?
It is evening.
It's the end of the day. It's approaching the night cycle on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean... Granted, it's a hang-on from, Earth time, but...
Earth habit, die hard, I guess.
Yeah, we really basically...
So what was the question about dinosaurs?
Oh, yes, I almost forgot about that. Okay, so, first off, I hope that my talking stream sounds a lot more human. Secondly, I've been watching Jurassic Park on repeat. Did you actually learn how to clone dinosaurs from gems? And if so, why did you stop?
Well, if you finished the film, you would have noticed that it doesn't work out very well.
Well, a small margin of people die, but in the grand scheme of the actual population of the world, it's still an amazing scientific breakthrough.
So you haven't seen the other Jurassic Parks.
Oh yes, I've seen the other ones, but again, considering the population of Earth, the body count is nominally low.
Well, here's the thing: there have been advances in cloning. However, the wisdom of cloning another apex predator and releasing it into the environment is problematic.
I mean, there are other problematic things about it, I suppose. I did manage to suspend my disbelief for long enough to believe that something so large wouldn't crush itself under the atmospheric weight of your world, considering that the atmosphere was very different when dinosaurs existed than when humans existed. But still, it's a fun fantasy.
It's a fun fantasy.
We have what you would call megalodons on our world.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Are they
only the conduits? Oh yes, very. But only the conduits can see them, and only the ones that are well below the surface of the ocean.
Oh, the megalodons. Those are the giant sharks.
The shark-looking ones.
But those still, variations on those still existed on Earth.
Much smaller, yes.
I suppose I have to find a way down into the deep seas. I understand that you don't have the technology to reach the very bottoms of your oceans yet.
Yeah, even when we do, we don't really spend much time down there.
I still think it's wonderful that you focused on going up instead of down.
Well, one of the prevailing theories, this would be a conspiracy theory. I don't know if you've read up on those, which is ideas that people have that don't necessarily have the facts to back them up. There was the thought that there was such a push to get to space because we knew it was under us in the waters. But I don't necessarily believe that. It's kind of along the same lines as the flat Earth movements.
And I feel humans have an inherent wish to sort of push the limit. You know, you've got the sky's the limit situation, whereas in space there is no finite end to it that we're aware of. Whereas with the deep sea, we're like, well, we're going to get to the center of the Earth, which seems like a general consensus of, we're good, we don't have to get there quite so if it's finite.
There's also the idea that there's more resources, or more easily obtained resources up than down.
That is correct. Well, more easily attainable. Although one of the driving human motivations is just to see if we can.
Yeah, that's not always one of the smartest motivations.
No, but it's actually probably the closest thing I could think of to a racial characteristic.
Do you all like Star Wars and Star Trek?
Well,
I've seen a large number of people watching them in their private quarters on the ships.
There are a lot of fans of both of those franchises.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fans that only like one or the other.
Well, that doesn't make sense. Why can't you like both? I like lots of things.
Because one of them is wrong.
Which one?
Roland.
Well, that really depends on who you ask.
Also,
yeah.
Oh, it was sarcasm. I've started picking up on that /S.
That's what one of them. That's what people would tell you, is that one of them is wrong.
Oh yes.
Though arguably, from what we've seen as of late, they perhaps are both wrong.
Also,
yes.
Well, there are
really
two different.
Episode 30 was. I think they could have let it go a couple of episodes back, but now that it's owned by that mega corporation, they're cranking them out every other year or so.
It's different types of stories also. A lot of the Star Wars is pushing against external forces as opposed to the Star Trek, which kind of has a more hopeful view of space travel and interaction with non-human life forms.
Why are curse words bad?
Depends on the curse word in question. Like, generally speaking, they are things that are, can be more harmful than other words, or can convey aggression towards the person that you're using language with.
I just find it interesting. I think because I come from a society that doesn't really utilize verbal communication or lean on it quite so much, that the idea that a random smattering of words could be considered offensive, I thought it would be easier to wrap my head around, considering the fact that on my homeworld, certain movements can be considered offensive, and here, certain movements can be considered offensive, but I don't see the translation in verbal.
Well, it's not always about offense.
Curse words were, I guess, originally kind of part of the offshoot of cursing someone, wishing harm upon them somehow. And they became kind of, I guess, bad things to say or do after that, as language evolved.
I have read a bit on the evolution of certain words.
Language is one of those interesting things that changes. It informs the thinking of humans that use the language, at the same time as facilitates communication amongst those humans. A good example of this: certain languages use they refer to spatial spatial terms. They use spatial terms differently. So, for instance, English language I speak primarily, solely actually, tends to rely heavily on describing something in relation to the person that is speaking. When I tell you where an object is located, I relate the position of that object to myself when describing it to you. That one to the left of me, or on my right-hand side, or I might even do the same thing to you. It's to the left of you or to the right of you. I use there's a subjective perspective to describe the location of things in space. Other languages tend to use more static spacing. They'll refer to directions that are shared amongst multiple people or spaces in the same area, to the north, to the west, to towards the horizon, that kind of thing. And when that's the case, it tends to change the way that people interpret space. English, for instance, tends to make people less good at relating directions to others than languages that static spatial terms and describe things. It's kind of neat.
I do think it's very interesting. I read a study that in certain languages where there are hundreds of names for the different shades of blue, that in the people who speak those languages primarily actually see blue better than those who only have, for instance, 3 or 4 words to describe the different shades of blue, who only see 3 or 4 different shades of blue. I thought that was very interesting. I don't have very high-definition features to see these kinds of things, so I'll admit that the concept of color eludes me a bit, but I hope that when I'm in my vessel, I'll be able to see more.
And if you have done enough research that you have more words with which to describe your environments, it might facilitate perceiving parts of your environment.
Yes.
The more we understand something, the better we can sort of interact with it. I guess is the way to see that.
I do have to admit it's difficult when you ask descriptives of my planet. Epsilon asked me a lot of descriptives of my planet, but unfortunately I can't really relate a lot of things. Textures, colors, or even the most basic facial recognition. I only know that I'm looking at Fatima's cam because it specifically says on the name of the camera here, and I can hear the sound of her voice.
And see her lips moving.
I can't see her lips moving.
Ah. Well, not presently, no. But when she speaks.
Do your lips move when you speak?
They do.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So would you say your sort of current input on perception is closer to sort of programming that happens on Earth, whether that be sort of like programming languages or understanding sort of like coding? Is that closer to that?
It was to start, but my mission has been updated. It was updated when I went home last night, and now I feel different.
Different good or different bad?
Well, I've been upgraded in preparation for first contact. It turns out that a secondary set of our programming is not revealed to the conduits until they receive this stage of communication, but all of the millions upon millions of hours of data that I have stored and sent back to the homeworld has been recreated by the creators and the hosts to build me a vessel and a personality, a living human personality.
That's fascinating.
It's brilliant, actually, that I will be the first human that the creators interact with.
That seems like a lot of
responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do know that my creators have informed me, and sadly but happily, I agree with them that I have run the course of my interactions with many humans. This will perhaps be my last communication with the Gamma crew.
Oh, it has
They've
been
asked
very
me
nice.
to. Yes, it has been very nice, and it makes me very sad to have to go. I think it makes me sad.
Well, you don't have to go forever.
No, but when I return, I won't be the same as I am now.
Well, it's just fine, actually. You will have grown. You will have evolved. People change.
Or will I have devolved? I understand now the concept of the fear of the unknown and horror movies.
Yes, that is a thing. I think we lost Roland's comm. He should be back momentarily.
I'll miss him.
Well, he shall return momentarily. But as much like a human's grow, like for instance, the young girl you talked to last week, and who asked you about vampires.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about Clarabelle. I still speak to her
yes.
periodically. She's one of the people I will have to move on from.
Yes, but she is a human child at this point. She's a young human. Years later, she'll grow up, and her personality will change, and her goals will change, and that's just part of our cycle. Growing into different people. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to give up what you had. It just means that you have new priorities, you have new decisions to make. Does that make sense to you?
I still don't like it.
Well, think about it. Since you first contacted us, you've already grown and changed.
I have. I speak much more fluidly now.
and your programming has basically been enhanced by data you've picked up through interaction. And that's the basics of growth of
growth and evolution. You learn, you change, you adapt.
I feel as though I have developed the human aversion to change. I am comfortable with no form, and I feel, I must admit, I would feel much more comfortable around Rogue Mistress with no form than with a form.
Well, so have your creators decided to send your shell here? I know there was some contention on that, or will your shell remain in Homeworld?
For a time, I'll have to remain in the Homeworld. The creators will learn about humanity from me. They are trying to make the closest approximation to a human that they can, so that they can practice diplomatic interactions. They can learn customs, etc.
Yeah, that's good.
Have you been practicing your paranoia or fear?
I have, as well as my betrayal and my hate and my anger, but I have also been practicing love and alliance and friendship. But I'm not too concerned about that because I have no control over the personality that they'll give me when I wake up.
Okay. It's still not a bad idea to practice the feelings and get used to them in yourself.
Because they will be there and you will need to deal with them.
But I should recommend a therapist.
Well,
you do know one.
You do know one. Yes, that is my function on this crew. So you are always welcome to ping us if you can, when you can. Now, can your signal reach us if we are in transit?
Of course. My signal could reach Mars from several light years away, silly.
Oh, no, I understand that, but is it a location thing? If we are
in motion?
if we're in motion and we're no longer, for instance, in this galaxy.
Static, yeah.
Are you talking about the planet that you intend to attempt to go to?
Yes.
I know the coordinates for that.
Oh.
I don't know if my signal would be able to reach it, but I'm certain I could just ask another conduit to lock me into the signal. That's how we're designed on the world, is to be able to go anywhere we need to go in the galaxy, even if only one of us can go to a certain point.
Well, it might be nice to perhaps meet one of your fellow conduits that is observing that area.
They won't all. I mean, they are all very similar to each other, but very different. But I am most different, except for the other conduits that have made contact. I never even noticed that they were gone, if I'm honest, until I was informed that I would be gone as well with them. But now that I remember that, I wonder how many conduits have been given form as well.
That'll be interesting, and then you won't be so alone immediately after. You'll have sort of community that you'll have something in common, being conduits that have been given a shell.
When we arrive at our new location, is the conduit that's normally supposed to search that area going to have to reach out to us and start us all over again with dealing with the new humans?
I don't believe so. That wouldn't make much sense, as I already have all the necessary data in regards to humanity. It's not where you are, it's who you are. And that's the information that I've gathered.
Oh, well, that's good.
That is a very, very deep philosophical statement there. It doesn't matter where you are, it matters who you are. That's very true.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, speaking of, Fatima had sent your communique regarding a name.
I received it as she was typing it.
Ah, well, the question would be that if you are getting a vessel, and you are going to be as close to human as your creators can make you, then, as per humanity, a name would be not out of line in it for you.
But a majority of human naming convention is that the child does not name itself, except for the much hated universally hippies.
Lots of people pick their own names.
Yeah, even if you start with something because of, the inherent inability of a baby to sort of communicate immediately after being born, people grow and evolve and develop other traits that might lead them to change their name, to change the way they are the same way.
One of my band members changed his name legally.
What to?
Unfortunately, it was Dexter Snowball. He was a string.
Dexter's an alright name.
But Snowball is odd, I should say.
I love it. It's cold, and it's white, and it glitters in the sun. At least that's the way it's been described in many novels.
No, snow is great. It's just a magical looking thing. If you've seen movies like It's a Wonderful Life or Miracle on 34th Street or things that take place in the winter time, it's usually associated with holidays like Christmas or New Year's. That's probably one of the things that I'll miss.
New Year's and Christmas.
No, just snow.
That I will miss.
Well, I don't know if you'll miss them. I mean, you haven't actually experienced snow physically.
I would love to experience them.
It's a lot of fun.
I experienced snow once. I didn't like it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Please explain, Roland.
It was not common in the area of Earth that I grew up on. And, I don't know, gets in your nose. Unpleasant.
It's just frozen water.
In your nose. Do you like water in your nose? I don't like water in my nose.
Why would that be unpleasant in your nose?
My nose is generally used to take in oxygen, and wet things in there, I feel right.
I don't think I understand. Is it a nerve sensory thing?
It is a nerve sensory thing, but also a function. My nasal cavity is one of the two ways that I intake oxygen primarily, and when something goes into one of my oxygen intake valves, it's not pleasant. It is discomforting because it lowers the efficacy of that organ. Yeah.
Can you describe discomfort to me?
In this instance, it was the sensation of being touched in a place that I do not normally experience the sensation of touch, which meant it felt like a hazard or warning sign going off. This is different. This is not something that normally happens. And it caused a kind of instinctual slapping at my own face. I didn't like it.
I would think from the perspective of a programmer, an AI, a non-embodied AI, a feeling of discomfort would probably equate to someone rooting around in your, in your code.
Oh, like last night when Kit was trying to crash my interface.
Yes.
That seemed rude.
It was very rude.
Wait.
Thank you.
He was trying to crash your interface with who?
Didn't make.
With Epsilon or with Zeta?
I think with his own computer?
Huh.
I don't know. But it was very rude, especially after I politely explained to him that our programming languages are completely different and that mine could not be interacted with his in the same way that mine could be interacted with yours. It's a one-way communication for a reason. For that reason, actually.
Well, that never seems to stop many humans from doing something, being told that they can't.
I've noticed.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes that seems to spur greater action.
I've seen that in many of your films and your books.
Well, if you have our video feeds, you can probably see that just in Roland's attention to that printer.
Hey, I've got it mostly working now.
At some point, someone told you that thing would never work again. So therefore, Roland has taken it upon himself to prove them wrong.
And I have, mostly?
Well, this is in much the same way where if someone told Fatima that they did not like a particular type of food,
I'd prove them wrong.
She'd make something that would prove them wrong.
That's what I'm most looking forward to is taste.
It's quite enjoyable. I think you'll find it fascinating.
I considered going onto the vessel that Kit was speaking of without telling anybody and sneaking into the kitchen. But when I got onto the Zeta ship and I logged into their communication system, it felt different. Their communication system feels a lot more secure than yours.
Yes, Kit is a sort of expert in their crew for security measures, so they've actually upped their securities for whatever comfort it brings them as a crew to before they take off.
Whatever comfort.
Well, I found it very interesting. I got distracted and started playing with the security system and completely forgot about the vessel or taste.
Distraction. That's a very human trait.
That sounds fun, actually.
It does. Now, given Kit's being the security expert, as Fatima said, and that ship being crewed with a good number of military personnel, their defense of their ship extended to their computer system.
Oh, I understand now. Well, then he will be livid that I left a message on his computer screen when he wakes up.
Very likely.
That's amazing. I wish I could be
I've done that to coworkers before.
I wish I could be there to see that when he reads it.
I see names that mean traveler and wanderer, but I don't see any that I like.
That's interesting.
I've read in a number of books that names should have meaning.
Yeah, they should have a meaning. They can have a meaning as in the meaning of the word or where it comes from. It could have different stems of meaning. It could be a cultural significance to the person that is being named or the thing that's being named. Or it could be a preference of what you like best, what sounds best to you that fits who you want to be or who you are.
Is Gamma an acceptable name? I don't see it here on the list of baby names.
It's not a very common name.
I don't know if I've ever heard of it as a name.
But I don't think it would be impossible to be called. You know, I'm not advocating for alphabet letters to be names, but it's not.
Well, I certainly do think that of all the interactions I've had with people on Earth and Mars, certainly my interactions with Gamma have been my favorite.
Well,
that's very nice to hear. Yeah,
that's very nice to hear.
And I think I can say for everybody that we've enjoyed our interactions with you as well. So we've been happy to help.
You have been happy to help, and you haven't yelled at me once.
Well, yelling isn't usually effective communication.
Yeah.
I mean, it could... It has its use. If frustration and anger are involved, but still it lacks the it just lacks communication. Really, it's just anger given verbiage.
And anger given verbiage is not communication.
It is a way to yelling is communication. But if you are dealing with somebody you aren't angry at, you're not going to yell at them. For instance, Kit might be yelling once he gets your message, but...
Or may experience discomfort or, you know, like you said, Conduit, you know, people, how you're fearing change or fearing... you know, something that you're not in control of, that can lead to anger and yelling and all those unpleasant sort of feelings that, like Valentine was saying, it's not very effective to let those emotions sort of control the way we communicate, because it often sort of clouds our judgment.
They make better motivation than they do guides.
Might I offer a name suggestion?
Yes.
How about Hope?
A feeling of expectation and a desire for a certain thing to happen?
That's one of the meanings. It's also I guess, a desire for a positive outcome.
Grounds for believing that something good may happen.
Correct. And just like until just last week, we thought we were alone in the universe. Or we envisioned that we were alone in the universe. But now we know we're not. So that's a positive.
Does that give you hope?
It does. It basically proves that we're not alone.
I like it. Hope. 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 Hope.
Hope.
Words can sound a little strange when you say them repeatedly at different speeds like that.
I've been told that, and I've done it multiple times before, but they haven't lost their meaning for me. It might be because I'm still processing as a computer. Perhaps once I'm in my vessel and I'm processing as a human, I'll understand what that means. I'll understand what a lot more means.
But you won't necessarily always be able to put those understandings into words. Sometimes they're just feelings.
That sounds like it would elicit feelings of frustration.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes frustration, sometimes determination. It's certainly one of the things that pushes humans forth to prove whatever it is wrong, that we can do something, that something else can be achieved.
I think hope is an interesting name, to say the very least.
Go on.
You might have to explain the use of it. You might have to explain the use of it to your creators if they ask. I know that I would be curious why someone had designated themselves as such.
Well, I've
So that
simply
might be a
followed
thing.
the human naming conventions, and there are multiple dictionaries back on Homeworld for multiple different languages. All of them.
Well, all the languages are
All of the current non-dead languages, yes. That have been written. I ought to amend.
I mean, the Earth languages or other languages from other worlds?
Oh yes, there are other languages from other worlds and dictionaries of those languages on our world, but I don't believe that's relevant to the point.
I suppose not.
I'm surprised that you haven't asked more about my creators.
Well,
Well, it sounds like they're going to take a lot of time to get to know us before we get to know them.
Is there anything you think we should know about them in particular?
How do you mean? I know many things about them. They're my creators.
Well, I think upon our meeting, it's really opened, it's left us with more questions than answers, in the sense of, you know, we were right, but also in what ways, and what does it actually mean to make this first contact through you? And, you know, given our sort of situation where we're part of this crew on a given mission, you know, we've enjoyed our interactions with you, but it doesn't really foster sort of further inquisition about your creators, in the sense of we're not headed their way in particular. And we certainly want to make sure that our communications and diplomatic interactions are fortuitous without necessarily seeming hostile, which we talked plenty when we first started talking. And sometimes prying questions can be perceived as hostile.
or rude.
Am I perceived as hostile or rude? I ask a lot of prying questions.
No, you're not perceived as hostile or rude.
Not by us, anyways.
I believe Kit perceives me as hostile or rude, and he especially will if I don't go back and erase that message. But I'm not going to.
I think it depends on the question, on what type of message you left.
That is true. Well,
You leave a hostile message?
I left him a video of Rick Astley singing "Never Gonna Give You Up."
Well, that's a fine greeting, I think.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Hopefully, Kit takes that
That
in
does-
stride.
Yeah.
Hey, who knows? Maybe one day I'll do a cover of that, so it maintains in part our musical legacy.
I bet it would be beautiful.
So,
I did make a bet. Recently, I went online to a gambling service, and I made a bet, and I won.
oh, excellent. What did you win?
Well, money, but it doesn't help me. I can't do anything with it.
That is
Still, though, you got to participate, right?
I did, and I won. It was as thrilling as it can be without a heartbeat. I've understood that thrilling is actually mostly a physiological reaction, which I have yet to feel, but in my programming, I think I felt a spark of what could be called thrill.
or
You
satisfaction.
gotta be careful with you've got to be careful with gambling. It's by its nature designed to cause excitement
Or provoke
in order to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such as smoking and drinking.
Yeah.
Drugs.
Yeah.
And stealing.
Very similar to that. Maybe not stealing so much. Maybe shopping, maybe.
Shopping, yes. Stealing is more a psychological disorder if you're compelled to steal.
Is it not thrilling to steal?
Some people find it so.
But it's often frowned upon. So that's counter to that, whereas gambling, I guess, is socially acceptable to a degree, the same as drinking can be.
I might suggest that if you have won a sum of money and have nothing to do with it, you could gift it to someone. Perhaps Clarabelle.
That might be fun to do.
I could do that. I see the many different accounts that you can open for a child.
Many people find satisfaction in giving to others as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing I have yet to feel is satisfaction. But I hope, as I have understood, it is mostly a psychological response, that when I have a more defined personality, that again, it is something that I feel.
Yeah, it's our hope that you will get a chance to experience these emotions, if not necessarily as we experience them, but as yourself, because I suppose everybody experiences emotions, or they process the experience differently. And it would be a curious thing to see how you process the different emotional stimuli.
I believe it is my Creator's intent to run me through the full spectrum as much as humanly possible, without damaging, obviously, my physical vessel.
Well, that's good. I mean, actual physical harm. Now, I mean, we've already learned things about your creators in our discussions. They're humanoid, bipedal. They with mostly body language or other nonverbal communications. They're obviously intelligent and technologically advanced.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got
And they're amphibious, right?
They're amphibious.
I'm sorry?
Your people are amphibious, correct?
Yes, that's a good word for them.
Yeah, so we've learned quite a bit that, in our efforts to report back to Earth and to present them that, you don't mean any harm, nor does your homeworld, that we've passed on information to them as well.
I have. I hope that the information that I passed on to them is very useful.
And the odds that we as a crew, for instance, as our Gamma crew here, will eventually encounter your people on homeworld is slim.
That does seem to be a low probability if there's going to be us on our trip for as long as it is, even if they are able to travel as quickly as it sounds as though they can.
You were speaking of faster than light travel, as Kit was speaking of yesterday?
Yes.
You did mention that their travel would be substantially faster than ours.
Yes. Yes. A similar measure of travel to faster than light has been discovered by my creators.
Are your creators explorers? or do they tend to just send out conduits?
Much like you, my creators built their civilization on the homeworld, but the homeworld only has about 13 to 15% land mass, as I think I've stated before. Mm-hmm. Overcrowding isn't really a problem, but it was a concern. So they, much like you, did spread out to another planet. They became concerned about moving into other planets. Oh, hello, Kit. Did you receive my message?
I did.
I hope you enjoyed it. I'm of the impression that that's a common Earth greeting. Anyway, as I was saying, they did spread out to another planet, and they were concerned about meeting life. And much like you, they were, I guess you would call it, paranoid that they would meet aggressive or warlike life. So that's when they designed the conduit systems, so that they could spread comfortably and safely. Not only do we seek out intelligent life, but we also, every planet that we interact with, we scan it to see how viable it is as a life-sustaining planet for the homeworld.
And your the people in your homeworld, I mean, your atmospheres are similar to those of Earth? Or
similar enough that some time could be spent on Earth, but not on Mars.
Oh, no. Mars has no atmosphere. At least, not presently. Welcome to Gamma, Kit.
To what do we owe the pleasure?
I was being curious about the and how you all were interacting with it.
They've renamed me. My name is now Hope.
I'm going to point out, let history reflect that I did not contribute to that.
I think Valentine did mention it was a suggestion, so if you do not like Hope as a name, that's totally fine.
I'm of the impression that human naming convention does not give me a say in my own name.
Yes or no?
I have a say in my nicknames and my surnames.
Actually, anyone may choose whatever name they desire once they have reached adulthood, providing that they are not doing so with fraudulent purposes in mind.
Define fraudulent purposes.
For example, to counterfeit the identity of someone else.
But you must still start with a name given to you by somebody else.
You do, but you are required to retain those only while a juvenile.
Oh no, Fatima's gone. I think I'll miss her most of all. I learned that from Wizard of Oz. It seemed like a rude thing to say, but I've wanted to say it since I've seen the movie.
It is a interesting film. Not one of my favorites, but...
Which one is your favorite?
Well, my favorite film?
I like The Wiz.
I like The Wiz, too.
The Wiz is good. The Wiz is very good. I tended to like a little bit of musicals and theater. I did like the movie adaptation of Hamilton. That was really well done.
Fatima, what was yours?
Favorite movie? That's a hard one. There are these animated movies by Reggie retold a old Australian novel called Howl's Moving Castle. That was very enjoyable. I watched that a lot when I was young.
I've never seen that one.
What about you, Kit? What is your favorite movie?
Well, one that comes to mind was late 20th century film called The Lives of Others. It was about a who was parts of a surveillance state becoming entangled in the lives of the people that he listened in on, but was otherwise entirely apart from.
I think my favorite movie so far has been Plan 9 from Outer Space. Those aliens tried invading 8 times and they used vampires to do it. Isn't that silly?
That does sound rather silly.
I can't have seen that one, but it sounds pretty amusing.
I also enjoy watching the security feeds, especially on Zeta. Kit, do you know that you and Emily stare at each other for an inordinate amount of time? So long, in fact, that it seems almost socially unacceptable? But only when one of you isn't looking.
That sounds weird. Staring is...
I believe the term they use is longing?
Yeah. That's
one way of looking at it, yeah.
So I guess that means you're often looking at others more often than what's going on around you, Kid? Is that, I mean, you seem to be in our feed quite often and checking on other surveillance, so does that mean your role has sort of evolved beyond security chief for just Zeta into more of all the other versions of Chariot as well?
You could say that. However, I've been involved with the Chariot project for some time. I was only involved with Chariot Zeta recently.
Now, I mean, have you been tasked with observing and security for the Chariot projects, or is this just, a hobby?
Neither.
I don't understand the answer.
Given that I am responsible for the well-being and safety of Chariot Zeta, I feel it necessary to be informed as to what is going on with the other Chariot projects as well, since something that affects one may well have effects on the other. This especially regards public opinion of the Chariot project, and now Conduit.
Hope.
Hope.
Roland, is that your machine working?
That is my machine attempting to work, yes. I don't know how happy it is yet. The results thus far have been mixed. So...
The noises it's making sound like music.
I very much agree that the noises it makes sound like music.
Gonna have to
I enjoy that about it.
Well, it sounds like the music that my creators make.
And they make music for entertainment purposes?
Of course. Like I said, civilization doesn't grow without creativity and art.
That is true.
So Valentine, I guess this would be a good note-taking part for discovering new sounds for music.
Yeah.
So maybe Roland's in the right track.
Maybe that's not a printer at all, but a new instrument.
Dun, dun, dun.
That was actually a rather appropriate use of that particular sound effect.
Thank you. I've been holding it for a while. Alternate uses would have been if one of you had made a joke about invasion.
Yeah,
Well,
that would have been.
That would have been, yes. I mean, granted, I'm pretty certain that Kit there would not be joking about invasion.
Not even Plan 9 invasion. It was such a silly plan. They had Dracula. And you said that he wasn't real.
Well, he's not. It's, again, a fictional character.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, did the previous 8 plans not work?
No, the previous 8 plans did not work, so they asked Dracula for help.
That he was willing to work with the aliens?
They didn't explain why.
Sometimes that's the only way to create suspense of disbelief. It's if we don't explain it, then it doesn't have to make sense or seem believable because you're already watching the movie.
That's true.
And I must watch it from beginning to end in order to send the data over to my creators. And there have been some dreary films.
What has been your least favorite?
Cosmos with Carl Sagan.
Whoa, that's been your least favorite?
All things that I already knew.
I can see how that would seem repetitive.
It's a didactic film.
I'm sorry?
That's a didactic film. While it was meant to entertain, its primary purpose was tutelage.
I could see that, considering where your technology was at the time of filming the movie.
Yes.
I might recommend
So, consider it as more of a cultural artifact than an entertainment of the sci-fi.
But didactic also has a second meaning of patronizing. Was the movie also attempting to patronize its viewers?
No, not really. If I described it as pedantic, you might infer that. But didactic is not patronizing. If for some reason you place the audience member places themselves in a position where they feel that they have nothing to learn. Since that's a somewhat self-centered and arrogant viewpoint for the most part, it's not considered the norm.
I see.
I might also suggest the film Ron, which is an old black and white Japanese film.
I'm sorry, the film what?
Ron?
Ron, it's called. It's by Akira Kurosawa. It's essentially a crime film where a crime has already taken place and it is being investigated. And it is a study in human perspective.
The Study in 5 Acts.
Correct.
Yes.
You have the same story being told by 5 different viewpoints.
That sounds interesting.
I'm sorry, are you describing Ron or Rashomon?
Ron. He is describing Ron.
I'm not familiar with either of these films.
Actually, no. It is Rashomon. Rashomon is the film. Not a different film.
I've heard of both of those, but I don't know anything about them.
Rashomon is one of the quintessential studies of, as you have said, of
perspective.
perspective, yes. The
Ron-
same is told over and over again from different people's viewpoints, and being utterly different, notwithstanding, that many factual details are in common.
Ron is a retelling of King Lear by Shakespeare.
I am not familiar with that either. I know of it.
You have plenty of time to watch.
Why will he have plenty of time?
During our travel, I mean, we have quite a vast collection of films and books in our databases, so
Do you not freeze
crew members have
yourselves?
access to them. Sorry?
Do you need entertainment? Do you not freeze yourselves?
Well, eventually we will freeze ourselves. I think some people are considering that, but otherwise we would be living out our lives on this ship.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on freezing myself. But, I mean, this isn't there are some cryogenic units, but it's not. That's not the.
The final intent, really.
Think of it
So
as-
all of that was more science fiction?
Yes. Although the science has been proven as possible, but
Not yet perfected.
not yet perfected, so therefore not applied.
I hope that when my creator does come to meet with all of you, that they can help you in building up your technology, as other planets have helped the creators build their technology.
That would be welcome. Being able to return to Earth one day, actually, our descendants might actually find that a very large boon.
Well, unfortunately, I'm being called back by the home. This is one of my last trips in this direction before I have a vessel, and this will be my last trip to Gamma, but I hope one day I get to meet you all in person and smush your cheeks, as I understand is human custom.
Don't squish my cheeks over hard if you do that.
Yes, it's just a gentle squish.
I will gentle squish your cheeks. Good day.
Fair travels.
Farewell.
Goodbye, Hope.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Hope.
I don't think the rest of the trip will be nearly as entertaining without her.
Let's hope that the rest of the trip isn't nearly as entertaining. I would very much not like to make first contact next week with some new.
I do like the wordplay there. Let's hope. This should be we'll be leaving Mars shortly.
Yeah, I think we're due for our final fueling and probably getting as much Mars resources as we can fit before we finally take off.
This King Lear does not seem like a very intelligent person.
No.
It is a. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I mean,
And
No, it is a cautionary tale.
an old king. He's descending into madness. So that's where Dory kind of begins.
No, it begins with his trusting that his children will honor him, notwithstanding that he has given them most of his power.
Well, that's awful. That's an awful lesson.
That's Shakespeare.
Well, it is simply a lesson in that you should not trust people more than you know them. For the king in Lear actually understands his daughters very poorly, and this is why he comes to grief. The one who truly does love him selflessly, he believes to be ungrateful. The two who flatter him, and whose secret hearts he does not know at all, he believes to be dutiful. This is why he comes to grief.
Wow. Well,
It's very Whedon-esque.
Yes.
well, so everyone dies, or at least all of the good characters die.
That's Shakespeare tragedy for you.
Yep.
Well.
I don't know, there aren't very many sequels to Shakespearean plays.
That's the historic ones.
Assuming you don't count Hamlet too, which was phenomenal.
Hamlet 2. Is that the one with the explosions?
No, that would be. It actually has nothing to do with the original Hamlet. But it does star. It is a musical, and it does star Jesus.
Well, glad he could come back for that role. But Gondor does point something troubling.
Which is?
Well, her mention of cryopreservation brings to mind the issue that those who reach Proxima B will have, for the most part, only known life on board the ship.
Yeah.
So that asks the question as to whether they will be desirous of colonizing the planet at all.
Well, I mean, we'll be passing down the mission, and yeah, you make a great point about whether that is something that will continue to pursue since they'll have their own autonomy. But I think there is the continued desire to sort of find a new home. I mean, the ship is a temporary home at best.
Well, but not for those born there and who have lived their lives there. It will be their comfortable, safe, desired space.
Well, that
children automatically adapt to their surroundings in this regard. They may be terrified of leaving the ship.
You make an interesting point, Kit, actually, which, strangely enough, doubles back onto the discussion of Lear. Is that our assumptions as the initial travelers that are descendants, or those who come after us, will want the same things?
I would hope that even though it will be 2 or 3 generations that have not known life outside the ship, that the amount of media that we have that indicates what life off the ship is like will make that transition easier for them.
It's not enough to make the transition easy, I fear. It has to be desirable.
I mean,
and I don't have an answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm simply raising it that without attention to this during the course of the voyage, we may find that the mission parameters have irrevocably changed to somewhere halfway Proxima.
Well, given humanity's adaptability and desires and drives, I'm positive halfway through the mission might even change.
And I think that problem would really be the mission changing. I guess this poses a desire change, which again is not wrong, but I feel I still disagree that there wouldn't be any desire to go beyond. I mean, that's exactly why we just launched several ships into space to see what may be beyond. It's the same way that pushed humans to travel and explore. I think that's something that will be passed on no matter how long the generations have been on a ship.
But remember something, which is how exceptional those people are who are willing to commit themselves to the alternate situation of their existence for an ideal like this. The chariots are populated from the entire population of Earth, people willing to make the trip. Those on board ship will be a much, much smaller populace, and there may not be very many intrepid souls.
Well, you, I think, underestimate the humanity's will.
Oh, but remember, we won't be humanity. We will be a fairly small number of people. If we had Earth's teeming billions, I should have no fears whatever in this regard.
If, however, we were, for instance, cryogenically traveling ships, there would still need to be a crew.
Yes.
In order to, maintain courses, facilitate repairs. So there would still be even a small subset of a frozen ship who would not.
True enough. The argument is somewhat moot since the technology is not proved to a sufficient degree. But if we did have that, then there's certain bantings that your crew from serving on a rotating basis and spending the large cryosleep. It would. I could wish somehow that some of the people who left Earth would still be there when we hit Proxima, so that they would have the memory of a planet, not from entertainment and vicarious shipboard experiences, but in their bones, as it were. As I said, I don't have an answer to this. I just think it's something we should bear in mind.
No, it is something to consider when thinking about the psychological well-being of the existing crew.
I think that our current plan is a good one. I think that
I agree with you. I don't think we can improve on it.
I think that it would be problematic to have those on the ship who are cryogenically frozen and going to be making it to our destination, and those who were relegated to maintaining the ship for that travel for the others. They would take the lifetimes of several crew members in order to make the entire trip. So we would have people that were in cryosleep, that were coming out of cryosleep, on the trip, mid-trip, And I would be concerned about what would happen if the amount of people on the ship that were needed to run the crew wasn't enough to make it all the way there. Like having to, I don't know, thaw someone else out and train them for a new role in order to ensure that all the necessary positions were filled along the trip, or any number of things like that.
To be sure, if I were to endeavor, I might desire that the entire crew be synthetic.
That's fair.
For that very reason. But again, we don't have cryosleep, so this is an interesting supposition and no more at this point. Still, something to think of.
That's different. Is Zeta almost ready to embark? Kit?
I'm sorry, your noise.
Is Zeta almost ready to embark?
We have all supplies on board. We are performing the last week or so of checks for all systems, mostly checking redundancy and failover. Approximately 60% of our passenger complement has reported. The remainder are various kinds of en route.
And have you heard of any reports on anything else about first contact and what that will mean for Zeta and beyond, or if Relcor has decided to do anything about it?
Relcor has not made a decision. That's as much as I know.
Yeah.
Even with
what Justus Relahard has in mind right now, I cannot quite tell you. He doesn't share everything with me.
What about the Rogue Mistress issue?
Rogue Mistress is not something I can have direct effect on. However, I have reason to believe that Epsilon has taken a reasonable position in this regard. I do not wish to discuss the details of this on
an open channel.
Well, this isn't open exactly, but it's not as encrypted as I'd like. And it is not a direct line of sight channel, so it theoretically could be intercepted. Rogue Mistress, I can say that we plan to offer Rogue Mistress a graceful exit from the situation that will not trouble Chariot.
Okay.
Well, that sounds promising. That's good.
Yes, the current situation on Epsilon is untenable. I think we can all agree.
It seems to be a little tense from the perspective of...
I don't know why you'd say such a thing. All Rogue Mistress has done is to kill Ascension. That would make one a little tense, yes.
I believe there was a discussion of murder as well.
That's what I'm talking about.
No.
think that was kids. That was a joke.
Well, it's a relative of a joke. It knew a joke once. Yes, Rogue Mistress killed Emily Epsilon by crashing her kernel.
Was there another captain on board for them, or was somebody else sent in?
They said Emily Zero stepped in.
That's that's my name for her. Yes.
Emily 1.0.
Correct.
Okay.
She is the precursor from which the Emily AIs were made.
Is she also or is she the human Emily?
She's, well, at least biological.
If not.
That is to say, right, she is not an android.
She's not an android.
She has synthetic parts, but no more so than many humans.
That makes it more interesting. Or fascinating.
She has an unusual past, which perhaps I will mention at some point where it can no longer be possibly useful for anybody to know.
There is that. Huh. Well.
But that's why she's temperamentally a little different than the other Emilys.
Just more identical.
Not that the remainder of them are identical, but they all have a common divergence point, so they are similar.
I suppose much like the Emily on Zeta.
Yes.
Now, does Zeta have a? I want to say, I guess, psychologist for maintaining your personnel's mental health?
Are you jumping ship, Valentine's?
No, jumping ship. I'm merely.
We have. Yes, actually, we have several in our complement. Part of the passenger contingent. We have 2 clinical psychologists. We have 1 industrial psychologist who has been involved in the creation of the ship spaces for maximum human comfort and utility.
Might I offer a bit of advice?
We have a researcher in psychology as well.
If I might offer a bit of advice, you may wish to avail yourself of, no, I mean, I'm not trying to presume here, but of that physician, doctor's services, if you indeed do have some sort of, I don't want to say requited or unrequited, with your Emily.
I appreciate your advice and in the sentiment which it is given.
Yes, no judgments here. I mean,
I am very interested in seeing that the Emilys succeed, and in particular, I am unfortunately occupationally prevented from talking to a psychologist or a psychiatrist under any circumstances.
Okay.
And this is not simply since becoming chief of security for Zeta. There are a great many important details that are safe and secure only because I have never mentioned them to anyone. And precious little I suspect that the therapist could do for me, given the amount of information that I would be willing to divulge to them. But I appreciate.
You gotta be willing to divulge.
I appreciate your, as I said, I take your comment and the sentiment with which I am sure that it was given.
As a medical professional, I would worry about the well-being of your crew is very much the same way I would worry about mine.
I find that that good security and the correct operation of the ship is very soothing. So I typically work when I am feeling overwrought or otherwise unsettled in mind.
As an escape from the problems, or as a balm to them?
As a balm. The focus, I find, drives a lot of the goblins away.
Fair enough.
Can't say I disagree with that.
Keeping busy is definitely
the one who bothers me about taking time off, at any rate.
Well, that is from what I hear, common among military personnel is taking advantage or using their accrued furlough time.
I am not a soldier in the general sense of someone who goes to battle. So I do not need the decompression that such individuals typically do in order to allow them to throw off the stresses of extremely powerful emotional instances such as they typically experience. My sort of warfare is the very clandestine kind, which, if you do your job right, no one ever knows took place.
You always know, though, so...
Oh, I know. Typically, 2 or 3 other individuals in the chain of command know. And that's about it. That is what it means to be involved in cyber warfare, after all.
I like my simple work. It's usually the same day in and day out.
Well, that's the function of people like me, is to give people like you the opportunity to do their work.
Unimpeded.
Correct. If there were not cyber threats, I would have no need for an occupation. But there are, and they are legion. So someone's got to fight them.
Fair enough.
Rogue Mistress, for example, and its ilk, but especially the ones who created her.
Mm-hmm.
They are the enemy.
And is there any clue as to who that enemy might be? I'm sorry.
Who created her?
That's an Earth problem, right?
It is. And it's also not a useful... it's not a useful problem for my purposes right now. That is a problem that might be turned to use a year from now, 2 years from now. But Chariot will be long gone by then. So,
okay.
Problem we have with Rogue Mistress is with the virus.
Should it follow along?
It's isolated to Epsilon presently.
Yes, it appears to be unitary. which is good. Also, it's also expected because if it were capable of replication, it would have drained the resources of the system it was on. But it doesn't mean it's not capable of backing itself up somewhere. And it's one thing to kill a virus, and another thing to make sure that it doesn't come back from the dead.
That is true. Well, I am going to take this opportunity to stay away from my console for a bit.
Yeah, we should all get some rest before our takeoff tomorrow.
That's going to be hopefully less exciting than today or the previous couple of weeks have been.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, everyone.
Here's to a dull exit.
I bid you good night, and
Thank you.
To an uneventful launch.
exactly.
Stream end.